So guys who sort of lost a spring in their step, what's often happening is their big toes are getting really weak. And this happens to us really starting remarkably in our 40s and 50s. One of the hallmarks of athletic aging is the loss of our distal capabilities. We hear a lot about grip strength in longevity, but it's not just grip, it's our hands, yes, and our full hand motion, our neck, and actually our jaw and our feet down to our toes. The weakness in the big toe really came to my attention when I started doing jujitsu when I was 45. And there's this simple move called the penetration step where you're down like this and you have to kind of go through it. And it really requires mobility and strength in the big toe to push off. And I just didn't have it. And I worked to get that mobility back and get some strength into it in the last couple of years. I've really felt as I'm walking around like a more young, youthful animal just from that one change alone. So I'm going to walk through a protocol that you can use using principles of progressive overload to start to make yourself feel more youthful, starting with the toes up, the big toe today. So one of the first tools you'll want is just a regular scale. And we're going to stand on the scale and look at the weight of the scale, not on the balls of our feet, but actually only the toes without letting the balls of the feet touch the ground. And we're going to see how much force we can put into the scale using only our big toe and not touching with the ball of the foot. So I'm kind of at a relative personal best for me right now, right around 93 pounds with the left foot. Oddly, for some reason, on my dominant foot, my right foot, I'm not as strong at all. So I'm getting upwards of maybe 70 on a personal best on that. So I'm working on evening that out. But that gives me a gauge of how my toe strength is coming along. To actually put together a program to improve the mobility and strength of the big toe, you'll want to start with something to just get blood flow into the toe and the foot. And scrunching up a towel or a shirt is a great way to do this. This is somewhat going to strengthen my toes, especially in the very beginning of the stages. This towel isn't really going to allow me to progressively overload very much, except doing more and more in terms of volume. But it's an important part of warming up and getting blood flow into the tissue. The toes and the fingers, the digits, work differently than every other limb in the following way. So when you want to move your elbow, the muscles that make that happen are right next to the elbow joint. But in this finger, if I want to move this finger, the contractual muscle that's making that happen is down here in the forearm. And really, it's a tendon and a series of pulleys keeping it in place that allow the contraction down here to turn into motion up here. And what does this mean? It means that the muscle is a little farther away from the actual limb where we're putting a lot of force into. As a result, there isn't as much vascularity and blood flow going into that tissue. So adaptations of the fingers as well as the toes, which are also working the same way, require a little bit more work to keep blood flow going into them. If you're into ATG, I think of this type of work analogous to the sled, that near range work that you do for the knee just to get blood into the surrounding tissue. The other thing I like to do is to actually take a large rice bucket and put my foot into it and move it around just to really get it stronger. This is something that rock climbers do for their hands, but I do it for my feet. It really gets you resistance in every direction and gets a ton of blood flow in there. Next, most of you guys who are doing any ATG have a slant board. These are easy to find on, a bunch of websites. Go to ATG to get one, or Amazon. Really just taking your toe, putting it on the slant board and using just the weight of your leg and then doing a toe curl. That's going to start to really get a fatigue into the muscle, and just do that till failure. Once that gets easier, you can just overload it by putting a little bit more weight onto the leg, get those toe gains. You can also progress to get your full body weight onto thin plates like this, and you can regress it, make it easier by holding onto a bar so it's not your full body weight. Once we're ready to progress this a little bit more, we can use something like a parallel bar close to the ground to really get deeper into the end range of motion, and then use the toe strength to bring us up. And maybe someday even be able to do it with one foot at a time. I have heard of somebody who's been able to put over 300 pounds of toe pressure into a scale. And I bet they can do that with one leg. And in general, just getting outside and walking barefoot in the woods is super important. Not just for the strength, the foot is very special because it has the most sensory information going to the brain on a per second basis. Getting the feet more capable and waking up the sensory connection from your brain to your feet isn't just about improving the gait, which it does, but also totally changing your whole proprioception, body awareness, the balance, and overall just feeling of well being if you get these feet working in a more wild fashion. So wake up your toes.